Hey everyone, this is Stacy with SF Johnson Consulting and Construction Services, and just wanted to present something a little different today and give you a little information on business organization, or the way that businesses in the United States and probably England, are where our founders are too. We get everything from them. How they organize businesses, just called different stuff, but how we organize business. And so when we say company organizational structures, what do we mean? So these are entities that are formed for the purpose of carrying on commercial enterprise, so doing business basically. And these business organizations are based on laws that cover both contract law and property rights and incorporation. And so we want to discuss just the three forms of business organization. And I have been in two of those as a business owner, and I definitely started in the first one, and yes, end up in the pretty much all businesses end up either, depending on the size or whatever, but as a corporation. So the three that we're going to discuss are the sole proprietor, partnership, and the limited liability corporation. So let me try to make this. We can't make it bigger. I wish I could make it bigger, but we can't. And I also will provide a link so you can go to the page directly after we post this. And so the first one is the sole proprietor. So the sole proprietor is just a single person that holds the entire operation as his personal property. And so when we look at business organization, we want to look at it in terms of, by definition, what is it, how, what is it? But then also in terms of liability, meaning if things go good, who keeps all the money? But more importantly, if things go bad, what happens? Okay, so for the sole proprietor, because they own everything in the business, all the debts and the profit are theirs responsibility. Meaning if the business owes debt to to anybody, any of their vendors, then the vendor can go after, meaning can try to collect from their personal assets. And so the sole proprietor is, in my opinion, the more risky of the businesses. It really depends on, you have to just make sure you don't lose your house and your shirt and everything else when you're a sole proprietor. Again, the individual owns the business, but they also own all of the debt that the business incurs, and they can, the vendor or whoever they owe that to can go after their personal bank account. So the only way to protect a sole proprietor really is for them to file bankruptcy. That way you can't, corporations can do it too, but that's the only remedy for a sole proprietor, is to file bankruptcy. All right, so the second is, and we'll go over to the right, is a partnership, where could be 2 or 50 or more people own the business, and the amount of debt and liability really depend on the amount of the percentage of the ownership. And the percentage of the ownership pretty much depends on the percentages of what they've invested in the business. And so we look at, or what they can offer the business too. They may be able to invest some money, but they can't do anything to help the business make money. So again, the amount of liability that they are responsible for and the amount of profit that they will be able to get at the end of the day is based on the percentage that they have agreed to in the partnership. It's not always 50-50, it could be 80-20, it really depends. And so that's a partnership. And the last of them it's a limited liability corporation, or also called, or limited liability companies, also called corporations. And in a corporation, basically the corporation itself is a person, is an entity, I say a person, but it's a thing, it's an entity more than person, because a person is a person. But a corporation is an entity that has rights to the property and all of everything, just as if it was an individual. And so, but the good thing about the corporation is that in terms of liabilities to the company, so if the company goes under, if loses money, whatever, the vendors for that company or that corporation owes, they can't go after their personal bank accounts. So all of the corporations can be owned by a number of people. Those people agree to become an entity. There's a contract. There's a requirement that you let your Secretary of State know that you exist as a corporation. There's a fee to become a corporation that the corporation pays every year to the Secretary of State for the privilege of being a corporation. Because again, in terms of liability, in terms of can they come after, and that's really your main concern when you think about opening a business is, do I feel secure enough that I can make it a sole proprietorship that or I can cover any of my losses and they don't try to take my house, which is very important. You don't want to go in business for that, or because you always got to look at both sides. I mean, for the first 2 to 4 years, you got to really know what you're doing or it won't succeed. So those are all things you want to take into account. And so for the corporation, yeah, if like my company is a corporation. So, but when you're a one person corporation, the laws are a little different as to who can come and all of that, but it's basically the same. It's an entity in itself. The assets that the owner, the sole owner, the operator like myself has, it's not subject to being taken if the business owes money. But I try not to do that at all other than to the government, and we make sure we either pay or we make arrangements to pay because we love our country. So, and we keep those arrangements. So, those are the 3 ways you can set up a business. And personal opinion, because I was both a sole proprietor, and yes, 20 some years ago, I had to file bankruptcy because of a whole lot of reasons. So, that makes you think twice, especially in the situation I was in as a single mom, and I had my 3 kids. I really, it was like losing a leg filing bankruptcy because you ruin yourself for a long time after that. So, though, that's why you want to think twice when you start up, and depending on what assets you have and whatever, you want to make sure you're protecting what you have when you start this business. Okay, so proprietor, partnerships, corporations. One, you carry everything on you and the liabilities and personally. Partnerships, you share liabilities and assets between 2 to 50 or however many people. And then corporation is a totally different entity in itself that the people that form that corporation, they don't have their personal assets aren't attached to anything that the business loses. And so that's pretty much it. And that would be the first topic actually in the law and business certification if you were to get that through your state. So you'd have to know business organizations. And the first part is the company organization, so how the company is organized. And then the second part of that would be how projects are organized. So, and we had a video on that, design, bid, build, that type of stuff. We already recorded a video on the types of project organization. And so if you have any questions on this or any thing related to this, make sure you email me at education@sfjohnsonconsulting.com. If you'd like to take a class, let us know, and please give us your thoughts. And if you haven't subscribed, please do. And we'll see you at the next presentation.